I suppose as a psychiatrist, I have been fortunate enough in the 33 years to see the truth of what Elsie and Chip have talked about this day and a half, that we are divine energy playing this game of life, and how could that be broken? It can't be. So I've seen people literally come out of their psychosis. I've literally seen, and I won't tell the long story here, but a man in a state hospital within a year after I met Sid, who had been in there for 47 years with the diagnosis of schizophrenia. In a group, he started laughing. He always had his chair to the side, and he was hearing voices and talking to them, and he started laughing about the third time I was in the group at this little state hospital in Illinois. And he laughed, and he laughed in his belly. He couldn't, have you ever been around? You can't stop. And in this group of about 25 people, all of whom had the diagnosis of chronic schizophrenia and had been there for many, many years, not one of them could not laugh. We were all, and me and the therapist, we were holding our tummies, and our eyes were watering. We kept saying, "Herb, what is so funny? Stop it, just stop it." And he laughed and laughed and laughed. That's when I've often said, you wish somebody was filming you surreptitiously, you know. Where's the NSA when you need them, you know? And he got through, and he took his chair to the center, and I said, "Herb, what happened? It's so funny." He said, "Doctor, I've just seen that I've made myself crazy with my own thinking for 47 years." That was huge. But then he said something that I didn't learn. I've only learned incrementally over the last 33 years. And I don't have to do it anymore. Took me 6 weeks to taper him off all of his medicines. I had a 3 or 4 year follow-up. He was living in an apartment in the town where he lived, and going to the senior citizen center every day and dancing and playing cards, living as Sid would say, as Chip would say, living an ordinary life, full of gratitude for what he'd come to see. We were, you know, I won't belabor him, and you can hear I'm just going to tell you the short story, but we with this one man who was in a florid manic psychosis. And I have come to everybody that I've asked now that's had a hypomania or a mania. I see mania as the best that mind could do when a person is at a certain level of understanding, because every person that I've asked, once they came out of it, what their last thing they remember before they went into a manic or hypomanic state, and what they said was, my depression was so unbearable that I was truly considering taking my life. One man was more blatant. He said, I had plans to kill my wife, my 2 children, and myself because I had failed them economically, financially. And this man was in a floored. He'd been up for, I forget, 40 some hours. And Clytie Mills, Dr. Mills, she hadn't married him yet, she was working with me. And Clytie, she and Drema Sue Odom and Hazel Foss would take turns coming to the hospital and making rounds with me on the weekend. And we walked in, and this man had been up all night, and they kept bringing him magazines from all over the hospital. And so he'd been ripping them up all night, and it was high. It was up to his mid-leg. And I don't know what moved me to say it, but I said something like, "Harry, it looks like you've really been doing some heavy reading." You know? Well, there was something about that stopped him. He was going 280 miles an hour. And that place where we all have humor, it stopped him. And And then I had an opportunity to say whatever I said. Again, you'd like to know what it was, but I suspect it wasn't the words. I suspect it was the certainty and the feeling. And he came out of his mania right in front of me. And so we spent about 10 more minutes just talking. Many of you have heard these stories many times, and I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but for some people to know that what they've been talking about is true, it's just true. That it's not. This is not about me. It's about the truth that's being pointed to. And so we talked about 10 more minutes, and he might have even said something about, I think I'm okay now. Or that evening, I got called back to the hospital for emergency consultation, and I went down on the unit, and his family was there from Massachusetts. And I told him last night, I think I pulled his daughter aside. She was 28, and I would never do this now. I never talk to family members without the patient present. I just don't do it. I wouldn't, I just don't do it because it's just not respectful. But I think I just gently, I said to her, I said, how do you see your father doing? She said, Doctor, I've spent the last 2.5 hours here with him, talking to him. He's in a healthier state of mind than I've ever seen him his entire life. He's fine. Right? So I discharged him. That was Wednesday evening. He'd come in on Sunday. And I don't know, somebody said that this was worthwhile last night when I told this story, and again, many of you have heard it. They came on, that was Wednesday. We made an appointment for 3 o'clock at my office on Friday because I wanted to, before the weekend, I wanted to make sure he was fine. It was new territory for me too. Sent him home, no medicines. I might have given him 2 or 3 just emergency, but to tell him to call me. Of course, we didn't have cell phones like we do now. It's 1985, right? So he comes in and he looks wonderful. 3 o'clock appointment. His wife does not look so good. And again, no judgment. God, she loves it. She loved her husband. But he looks wonderful. And I said, how are you doing, George? He said, I'm sleeping through the night. He said, those economic things, those financial things. He said, already, because my mind is so much quieter and I'm not focused on the problem, I've seen 2 solutions already. We're going to be fine financially. We're going to be fine. He said, I said, when I found myself becoming the devil's advocate, I said, yeah, but what about all those thoughts at night when you try to go to sleep? What about all those thoughts? He said, well, I said, what do you do with them? Right, and I didn't say it like that, but I said, I was curious more than anything. I said, George, what do you do with all that? Do you still have a lot of those thoughts at night? He said, yeah. I said, what do you do with them? He said, well, I count them. He says, hell, they're as good as sheep. And I'm certainly not going to pay attention to the content. I saw where that got me. Right? Wow. He's fine. So I said to his wife, I said, how you doing, Betty? She said, I'm not doing well. So I haven't slept since George came home. Been up for 48 hours. She wasn't manicky, but she hadn't slept. And I knew, and I bet you know too, why. I said, how come? She said, well, I'm just worried to death. I said, Betty, what are you worried about? She said, I'm worried that he got well too soon, that he's going to get sick again. All my friends have told me, no one comes out of a manic episode like that. He's had a flight into health. He's going to be, he's real soon, he'll be back. It can't happen. So I said to her, I said, well, what would you be doing if he was still in the hospital? She said, well, I'd be worrying that he wasn't getting well fast enough. And that's what I laughed. I made the mistake. I laughed, and she got really B-I-S-S-E-D, right? And she said, I love my husband. And I said, I know you do, Betty. I'm going to at least ask you to be open to the possibility that worry has 0.0 to do with love and 100% to do with insecurity. She said, well, how can you say that? And I said, well, To me, love is having a light-hearted, loving heart available in my life. To my family, to my colleagues, to my people I meet in the grocery store. It means to be in a state of love. And from my life experience, if I start giving attention to worrisome thoughts that are just computer thoughts of, what if this happens? What if that? I said, I lose that feeling so quickly. I lose my ability to stay in a loving, lighthearted feeling. I lose my compassion for myself. I lose my compassion for other people. I lose my ability to sleep well at night. I lose my ability to see beyond the problem to the solution. So it doesn't seem to me that that could have anything to do with love, because I think love is the answer. It's the answer we're all looking for. They came to a little group that I had for 6 or 8 sessions, and they were fine. Never had a problem again. I could go on and on and on. You take any diagnostic category in the DSM-5, and I could talk about it. Because there's really one mental illness to me. It's chronic mental stress. Chronic mental stress. Those things that I told you about, I asked people to give me scores from 0 to 5. 0 being those kind of thoughts just go in one side of the mind and out the other, and 5 being I get so tangled up in that kind of thinking that if there's a Hall of Fame, I should at least get honorable mention. Right? Many are 5s down the board. And then I ask how many hours they sleep. And often, sadly, so often, it's like 4 or 5 hours. And I used to ask, how many hours of those 19 hours are you in some form of stressful thinking, entertaining stressful thinking? And most people, they say, oh gosh, 12, 14, 16. But some people that are having panic attacks and dissociating and all these symptoms, all these physicals, they would say maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes, right? I knew it just wasn't true. So I've gotten to ask the question in a different way. I say, of those 19 hours, how many of those hours are you at a quiet peace? Because if it's not that, then it's stressful thinking. Because the default setting is a quiet place of peace and a loving, lighthearted, joyful feeling. And it's not like we're going to live there all the time. Please don't hear that. There's no shoulds here. But just knowing that that exists, and then that is the default setting, that's so reassuring. Like Sid says, with faith and hope as beacons, everything is something like anything is possible. And what allows you to have faith and hope is a growing awareness and a knowing that you are divine energy. As he says, we're both a spectator and a participant in this divine thing called life. And as you know that, even when you're lost, one of my favorite things of Sid says, as was said earlier by Chip about Sid saying, never fully have insights to the end of the insights regarding the principles. He says that there's an infinite number of insights into the nature of the 3 principles, right? Infinite. And I always say, I haven't looked at my math book for a long time, but the last time I looked, that's a really big number. And so when I am in emotional pain, when I'm triggered, it's always, to me, it's my ego or insecurity. They're kind of flip sides of the same coin, of using thought in a way that it's about me, or insecurity, or losing something that I've attached my happiness to. But I now, even if that happens, I know that it's in the cards. If I allow my mind to quiet, I've come up against something that I have an opportunity to see the principles deeper. I know that if those moments that I'm in emotional pain, if I can have the courage to leave my thinking alone, that it's in the cards for me to see something new, to go through maybe one or two more of those doors, of infinite number of doors. Not 3,000 of them, but maybe one or two. But all it takes, it seems like, is one or two that allows life to be a little gentler than it was before, even in difficult life circumstances.